So, James, let's begin with the Mail on Sunday, shall we?
Sure.
And we saw the picture from the Mail's website there. Here's the headline you referred to, Bloodbath at BBC as Chief quits. This paper's not been a great advocate to the BBC, it has to be said. Very sensationalist tone. It says more people are tipped to go. This is going to make uncomfortable reading for some other management figures at the BBC. And it refers to that interview George Entwistle gave to BBC Radio 4's Today programme, and it says that he was humiliated by the presenter John Humphreys. And during this interview, this is when he said he'd not actually seen this Newsnight film when it went out. So it sort of makes a link there between that and his resignation.
We've been breaking this news just recently. It's been reported from Switzerland that a gunman has opened fire on a village street there, killing 3 people and wounding 2 others. Seems this shooting happened at night in the village of Daillon in the southern region of Valais. Well, our news reporter James Kelly is here in the studio with me. I know information is still quite thin on this, James. What have you got?
Well, we are getting some more facts coming through. What we know is that a gunman opened fire, 3 people were killed, 2 were wounded. It appears that the police got a call saying a man had opened fire on residents, that there were bodies lying on the ground. They dispatched armed officers, and there was some sort of shootout. The police were threatened in some way. It's not clear whether this man shot at the police or threatened them, and they shot and wounded him before taking him into custody. We are getting some information through Swiss news agencies and websites saying this could have been an assault weapon that was used, that one of the dead was an elderly woman. This is all unconfirmed at this stage. But the village has been sealed off, and we're expecting Swiss police to give us some more information later on today.
Good morning. First, our main news this morning. The UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon has called for an immediate end to the conflict between Israel and Gaza, which is entering its 6th day.
In one Israeli strike yesterday, 11 members of one family were killed, including several children, bringing the Palestinian death toll to 80. And Hamas militants continue to fire rockets in return. They've killed 3 Israelis and injured many more.
Dawn breaks in Gaza with further evidence of this continuing conflict. Overnight, a thunderous explosion lights up the sky. And in a residential neighbourhood in southern Gaza, chaotic scenes as emergency workers respond to the destruction of a 3-storey house, reportedly the result of an President Obama welcomed the move, but signalled he wouldn't tolerate future political showdowns over America's finances.
I will not have another debate with this Congress over whether or not they should pay the bills that they've already racked up.
During the debate in the House, members from both sides spoke in favour of compromise.
This is the time for the House to act.
The deal will mean a new higher tax rate for families earning more than $450,000 a year, fewer than 1% of Americans. Unemployment benefits for 2 million Americans will be extended, and more than $100 billion worth of spending cuts will be delayed for 2 months.
Our reporter James Kelly has the latest.
Tears on the streets of Caracas. It's clear the grief is shared by many. The Venezuelan president was revered by his supporters. This man says of Hugo Chavez, "We love him. May you rest and may you see glory." Tributes from across Latin America were swift in coming.
Here's the BBC's James Kelly.
Banging the drum for jobs. Anti-austerity protesters on the streets of Brussels. They're certainly making themselves heard, but are the leaders of the European Union listening? The demonstrators believe the belt-tightening response of governments to the EU sovereign debt crisis is strangling hopes of recovery.
We've seen it in Greece and everywhere in Europe. Austerity is counterproductive. It kicks companies out of business, it puts people in misery. What we want is another policy that's intelligent and creates sustainable growth.
James Kelly has the story.
Soon to be married. A happy couple take to the skies for a wedding they'll never forget.
Ending positions, everybody. Brace.
But shortly after they exchange their vows, the wedding party comes back to earth with a bump. And then an almighty crash. Fortunately, no one was seriously injured, and there was no significant damage to the house the balloon unexpectedly dropped in on.
Let's cross now to the Court of Appeal and our correspondent James Kelly. James, I gather the judges didn't actually give their reasons for their decision tonight.
No, they didn't. We will expect some reasons by next week, but what's happened here tonight has been not quite unprecedented, but certainly very unusual. There was an appeal lodged today to overturn a High Court decision yesterday that the treatment could be withdrawn of this 9-month-old boy, and because of the urgency of the case, they decided to go ahead with the full appeal. The parents were saying they'd not had enough time to prepare. They wanted to have some expert guidance on this case and hear the appeal next week, but the appeal's been heard and it's been dismissed, and that's the end of the legal road for the parents of this 9-month-old boy. Treatment can be withdrawn. The Home Office says it can't comment on individual cases, but Al Bangura won't be deported while his appeal is being considered. The fans here have raised their voices in his support. They'll be hoping the Home Secretary Jackie Smith is listening. James Kelly, BBC News, Watford Football Club. In salons like this one in central London, people are taking full advantage of the latest in tanning technology. Here they follow the Sunbed Association's code of practice that says sunbeds shouldn't be used by children under the age of 16. But cancer charities and skin experts would like to see a UK-wide ban that would close the door on all under 18s.
This is 5 Live.
Well, our reporter James Kelly's in Manchester city centre.
Our reporter James Kelly is outside Nottingham Jail for us. Our reporter James Kelly is in Sheffield.
Our reporter James Kelly is in Tewkesbury.
James Kelly is at the court in the capital Douglas.
James Kelly is at Warwickshire Police Headquarters.
First, let's get the latest from James Kelly.
Well, let's go to one city which does suffer perhaps more than its fair share of such crime, Manchester. James Kelly, our correspondent there.
It's 11:51. The Foreign Office says it's investigating reports that a British person has been killed by a polar bear in the Arctic. Our reporter James Kelly is here. What do you know, James?
Well, this is a breaking story in the last hour or so, and some of the details are a little sketchy, but it's been reported that 5 members of a British group were attacked by a polar bear during a trip in the far north of Norway, the Svalbard archipelago. That's midway between mainland Norway and the North Pole. One of the group was reportedly killed and the others seriously injured. They've received treatment in hospital and are still receiving treatment in hospital.
This is 5 Live Breakfast. Good morning.
What we know is that this happened on the southbound carriageway of the M40 between junctions 12 and 13. That's near to Leamington Spa.
Our reporter James Kelly is outside Her Majesty's Prison in Nottingham.
Yesterday, there were about 20 or 30 prison officers milling about when this strike action was called first thing yesterday morning. Now you're seeing a scene of prison officers walking into work. I can see one now, the bag over the shoulder, going into work to get ready for a long day, and what could be an interesting day after this prison was being run by governor-grade officers and non-union officers, maybe only a score yesterday.
James Kelly is our reporter. How did he become trapped in the first place, James?
Today's brief inquest hearing at Gloucester was told how Mr Hopkins' home was deluged by rising floodwaters on the 20th of July.
Our reporter James Kelly can tell us more.
Well, now let's have a more detailed look at what the morning papers are saying. Here's James Kelly.
Yes, and Gordon Brown's trip to Washington features heavily in all the broadsheets. He's pictured smiling and chatting with each of the 3 presidential hopefuls in turn.
Our reporter James Kelly is in Tewkesbury. And James, just remind us exactly what this town went through.
Well, I'm sure you remember seeing the pictures on the television screen of Tewkesbury being surrounded by water, virtually cut off. It stands on the confluence of the River Severn and the River Avon, so that's perhaps no surprise that it was so badly hit by last month's floods.
James Kelly is our reporter at a Northern Rock branch in Leeds. James, any queues there or not?
It's a very different scene here in Leeds city centre to that which I witnessed yesterday.
Our reporter James Kelly is outside the gallery now.
It was interesting that there was a sign up in the entrance before you got into the gallery proper, warning people about some of the exhibitions that are on show here having strong language, nudity and violence.
Okay, well...
Which stance should I adopt for starters?
Roughly with sort of 1 foot forward, weight evenly balanced.
Okay.
So you're ready to move.
Right, okay.
Yeah? Okay, so from here, we're looking going from here. From here, you can look at hitting, you can look at
Please don't.
ambitions.
I'm now on the floor.
Good.
Oh God.
And that's the armbar we were talking about.
So this is how you won your last fight. My arm is now being pulled against against the elbow. I suspect you're going rather gently on me. If this was a real fight...
Yeah, I'll put it on a bit more firmly than that.
Yeah.
But generally, you get to this position, and then the other person sort of feels the pain there. I know they can't get out of it, so you tap, and that's the end of the fight.
Okay, so my head is under your calf and pinned to the floor. My arm is being pulled back against the joint, and this is a submission.
Yeah.
A year ago, our reporter James Kelly is at the Old Bailey. James, just remind us about this case.
Well, you remember, Simon, this was quite a shocking case. Kyan Prince seemed to have a glittering future ahead of him. He was a member of the youth team for Queen's Park Rangers. He was described as a role model with leadership qualities, and he was a valued member of his school. But on May 18th last year, he left the school, the London Academy in Edgware in North London, and he intervened in a play fight between another youth and the defendant in this case, Hanad Hassan. Hanad Hassan produced a knife, grabbed Kyan Prince in a headlock and plunged the knife into him twice, once in the arm and once in the heart, and it was that wound with a 5-centimetre penknife blade that proved fatal.
Let's go back to the Mall now, where James Kelly is running around faster than Usain Bolt trying to chat to people. Have you been hobnobbing with the celebs then?
Well, I don't want to mention McFly again, Gethin.
You love McFly, you just did. It's all about you.
Yeah, well, McFly, Claudia Winkleman's been here. We've seen some of the athletes, Jason Gardner, and it's absolutely really gearing up now. McFly, dare I mention them again, are the ones who are rehearsing on stage at the moment, and I'm next to the gates, and they're about to let people in. When we first talked, Gethin, there was maybe 100 people here. Now there are 1,000, 2,000. I can't count the number of heads.
BBC News at 8 o'clock on Saturday the 20th of July. Good morning, this is James Kelly. Belmarsh Prison has suspended 5 officers while police investigate an alleged attack on a Woolwich murder suspect. Israel and the Palestinians are to have their first face-to-face talks in 3 years. And MPs warn that crime commissioners can sack their chief constables too easily. 5 prison officers have been suspended while police investigate an alleged assault on one of the 2 Woolwich murder suspects. Michael Adebolajo, who's accused of killing Fusilier Lee Rigby in May, was reportedly injured at London's Belmarsh prison on Wednesday. John Andrew reports.
It's believed that Michael Adebolajo lost 2 teeth during the incident 3 days ago.
The private investigator at the centre of the News of the World phone hacking allegations, Glenn Mulcair, has apologised for any hurt he's caused. James Kelly has been following the day's developments.
Glenn Mulcair is at the eye of a media storm that's grown ever more fierce and unpredictable with each new allegation, and one that shows no sign of abating. The private investigator told The Guardian that when he worked for the News of the World, there was a constant demand for results. He said he wanted to apologise to anybody who'd been hurt or upset by what he'd done. He made no direct reference to Millie Dowler in what was a written statement. Here are some of his words.
Working for the News of the World was never easy. There was relentless pressure.
Time now, 7:09. 4 members of a gang specialising in fake identities and documents were jailed yesterday. They ran their multi-million-pound operation from Spain. James Kelly's been following the story. And James, this was an operation that ran online. Tell us how it worked.
Well, this was a very sophisticated operation. How it worked was there was a website called Confidential Access. People could go to this website and basically get dossiers of information they could use to steal other people's identities. One of the people who was jailed yesterday, Jason Place, a 42-year-old from Kent, he was running the operation from a villa in Alicante in Spain. He had sourced information about Britons with good credit ratings. and these details were being used to create false documents. So basically they were taking information about people.
After the floods, the waters may have gone from Gloucestershire and Worcestershire, but life is far from normal. Reporting for PM, James Kelly.
The town of Pershaw is almost equidistant between Worcester and Evesham, perched as it is just off the A44 in rural Worcestershire. It's a peaceful location surrounded by lush green countryside and farmers' fields. It also has the usually tranquil River Avon running alongside it. Tranquil, that is, until Friday, July the 20th.
Well, this is the oven that was brand
You're listening to The World Tonight with Roger Hearing. As of midnight, if you're selling your home in England and Wales, you'll need a HIP, a home information pack. James Kelly's been finding out how prepared people are for it.
A cursory glance in any estate agent's window here in the small commuter belt town of Gerrards Cross in Buckinghamshire reveals it's places like this that will feel the effect of home information packs first. 4, 5 or even 6-bedroom homes are not rare here. From tomorrow, any such properties that come on the market will need a HIP. One of the town's estate agents is Trevor.
Harry Potter fans are braced for the release of the final book tonight. Some are queuing to be first to get their hands on it. James Kelly has been to see some of them.
It's hard to believe so much anticipation could be engendered by a children's publication. But just as Harry Potter is no ordinary adolescent, this is no ordinary book. J.K. Rowling's creation has been nothing short of a publishing phenomenon since the teenage wizard's first appearance in print 10 years ago.
Scarred by years of conflict. James Kelly reports.
This latest humanitarian crisis to hit Darfur is the result of heavy fighting between 2 Arab tribes over gold deposits in the north of the region. The United Nations had previously reported 70,000 people had been displaced. It's now increased that estimate to 100,000. The largest group have congregated in a town where all public offices and schools have been closed to accommodate them. The UN said it had delivered more than 600 tons of food to the area, but had been unable to calculate the scale of the conflict because the authorities...
It's time for the news with James.
This is BBC Radio 6 Music.
Murray's epic win makes history. Row reopens over exam grades, and boozy parents warning issued.
6 Music.
BBC News, I'm James Kelly.
Oh my goodness, he's gone and done it, and he's done it the hard way. He's beaten Novak Djokovic, the defending champion, the second best player in the world, over 5 sets, over 4 hours and 54 minutes.
The BBC's Jonathan Overend describing Andy Murray's historic triumph last night. The Scot made tennis history, winning an epic match against Novak Djokovic in the final of the US Open at Flushing Meadows. It's his first Grand Slam title. The last time a British man achieved the same feat was back in 1936. After losing his first 4 Grand Slam finals, Murray was understandably relieved.
It was very, very tough for me mentally to...
James Kelly has the latest.
Armed mobs and looters on the streets of Western City in Kenya. The country's been in the grip of violence since last week's disputed election result. Jonathan Burney was on holiday there.
Very unnerving.
Stop to it. Here's Newsbeat's James Kelly.
This is the second campaign against sex trafficking in 2 years. Last time, more than 500 brothels, massage parlours and other premises were raided, and more than 80 women and girls were rescued. Women like Anna.
If I don't make money, they put me in the cold water, in the bath. Cold water with ice and heating, or you're not allowed to eat if you don't make money.
Newsbeat.